This is Caring for Kids on News Talk 760 WJR. Presented by the Children's Foundation. And here's your host, President and CEO of the Children's Foundation, Larry Burns.
Thanks, Mark. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Caring for Kids. This is our June edition, and I hope that everybody listening is healthy and safe. Tonight, we have a great show. We have a lineup of guests who will be discussing the health and wellness of children and families. Tonight, we're going to start with Jason Longwell, who's the Executive Director of the Rocket Mortgage Classic, Lizabeth Ardisana, co-founder of both ASG Renaissance and Performance Driven Workforce, and a recent addition to the Children's Foundation Board of Trustees, and Kiran Taylor, Chief Medical Officer for the Hope Network. It's all coming up next on Caring for Kids, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Our first guest is Jason Langwell. Jason is an Executive Vice President in Intersport, where he leads the newly formed Detroit office and also serves as the Executive Director of the first ever PGA Tour event in Detroit, the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Jason, a two-time collegiate All-American golfer, sporting marketing career. It started in the golf business. He spent the first 15 years of his career building and managing sports marketing agencies and business units throughout one of the largest agency holding companies in the world, and that's the Interpublic Group. Jason, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Larry, good to be with you.
It's great to hear your voice. I know you're a very busy man this time of the year, so we really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with us, and our listeners want to hear more about the Rocket Mortgage. So I mentioned you spent the first part of your career with the Interpublic Group, leading many initiatives in the golf business. So tell our listeners some of the most memorable highlights of those years.
Yeah, Larry. Sure. You know, I had the pleasure out of college where I played a little bit of golf, as you mentioned.
Right. Just a little bit.
Get into just a little bit, yeah. Just to get into the golf business. I realized I wasn't going to be a professional golfer. I'd played the game a lot, and I was good at it, but not quite the level needed to make it my profession. So I got in the business side of golf and had the pleasure of leading the world's largest amateur golf tournament. It was known as the Oldsmobile Scramble, became the Buick Scramble, and learned a lot about grassroots marketing and event operations, and marketing and media gave me a real nice base to build from. And then from there, I widened out a little bit, and it's always fun to start new things from scratch, and being a part of launching something, and was a part of launching an agency called GMR Works. It was General Motors sponsorship and experiential agency, handled Buick Golf, a number of other activities, and then went on to lead the Verizon NFL business on behalf of an Interpublic agency called Irwin Penland. And those are all very special memories, and
wow,
in a way that I was able to get into the business of sports. Yeah, no, it was very fortunate to have some great mentors and opportunities that kind of allowed me to tap my recreational passion and bring it to the professional side of my life. To your career.
Yeah, wonderful. So today is Executive Vice President of Intersport, and we're talking with Jason Langwell. You helped create the first ever PGA Tour event in Detroit, in the city of Detroit, the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Last year's success was remarkable. We were involved with the Children's Foundation, and Jill Nelson and I were very involved with you and Rob Kroll and others. And so looking back, what are you most proud of from that inaugural year, putting together this great tournament quickly and having such success? So what are you most proud of?
Yeah, I get a little goosebumps when you say that. As you reflect back, I know it's hard to pinpoint one, Larry. I think there's so many. I think I think part of it is firmly establishing the tournament in the community and on the Detroit sports map. You know, we had large crowds, sellouts, large volunteer numbers. We had tons of corporate partner support, and most of them returning for 2020. I think being recognized as the most awarded event on the PGA Tour in our inaugural year. You know, we had the best special event in the Area 313 Celebrity Challenge. We had the best tournament sales award. But probably, being the PGA Tour's recipient of the first Fairway Award for our diversity and inclusion initiatives would probably be at the top of the list, I might say. But I guess if I had to pick one, it'd just be how so many different people in organizations. Jay Farner, Bill Emerson, Casey Herbis from the title sponsor, you as partners in the nonprofit community, Detroit Golf Club, our volunteers. So many people came together to do something in 11 months that was supposed to take 24 months. And to not only do it, but do it the way that we did, to put a spotlight on, the spirit of Detroit, which we define as the people and places of Detroit. I don't know. That's probably
a lot.
Yeah.
And you should be very proud of all of that. And then in March, COVID-19 hit us all, which kind of changed everything. And so tell our listeners how that has impacted the tournament. And then later on, we'll talk a little bit about the tournament. But COVID-19, the crisis occurred. What happened with you and the tournament?
Yeah. Well, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, as you know, Larry, we're the fourth of 4 golf events in the PGA's, Return to Golf initiative, played without fans. And I think the tournament for us this year presents us with a new opportunity to support the Detroit community through a new multi-year campaign we've announced called Changing the Course, which has a vision to end the digital divide amongst Detroit residents by providing access to the internet, access to digital technologies and digital literacy training. And so our mission is to host, a world-class PGA Tour event while benefiting the Detroit community. That is why we are doing what we are doing. And all of those proceeds from the event and all of our tournament-related activities will support this Changing the Course initiative in partnership with Rocket Mortgage through the Rocket Giving Fund. And as you said, the COVID-19 shined a light on a number of unaddressed issues in Detroit, but internet accessibility being, I would think, one of the most severe. So this initiative is going to invest funds in organizations and infrastructure that's going to ensure, internet access technology, digital access becomes available across Detroit as fast as possible.
Right. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but one of the things the Children's Foundation, and you alluded to it, the COVID-19 crisis occurred. Mm-hmm. Kids could no longer go to school. And many times kids, particularly underserved kids, they get their best meals at school. So I mentioned we had an emergency fund. A lot of those funds going to places like Brilliant Detroit and PAL and other organizations are for food. But also what we've learned is that many of these important nonprofits have been providing services in person, either mentoring or coaching or things of that nature, like a First Tee. And so that really opened up my eyes, and I believe many eyes, on how many children in Detroit are underserved as it relates to technology. And so you're gonna do something about that, and you've committed, I think, a number of years to do that, and so I commend you for that. That is going to be something that the Rocket Mortgage Classic is going to be known for many years. So congratulations on that.
No doubt. I mean, and when you think about this new pathway, I mean, this initiative is going to apply, as you mentioned, to Detroit's youth that are affiliated with the Children's Foundation, and that, prepares them for their future and adulthood. Getting digital access, devices and the technology that provide a means to that access, and then the training necessary is going to create some opportunities to succeed in areas like education and, career employment and healthcare. And so, changing the course, it's going to provide the youth of today, the opportunity to progress and evolve in this digital society that we're a part of. And that's the way of how the world functions, not only now, but in the future. And as you said, all the Rocket Mortgage Classic corporate partner donation and investments, all those proceeds from all the activities that you and the Children's Foundation and others support, things like we're going to have an online merchandise store during the tournament, that all of those things are going to be put towards Changing this Course initiative, managed through the fund. And those are the ways that we're going to continue to work together, Larry, to impact the outcome here in Detroit.
Yeah, we're just delighted and really excited. Talk about goosebumps. That gives me goosebumps to know that we can be involved in that, Jason. We're talking with Jason Langwell, who's the executive director of the Rocket Mortgage Classic. So the tournament is coming up quickly. And so how will the tournament differ from last year? And I know that you were in Texas a couple weeks ago checking out what they're doing with no fans. And so tell our listeners in the next few days, what they'll see on TV and how that experience might be.
Yeah, sure, Larry. Well, last year, take a step back, we spent a lot of time figuring out a way to fit large crowds into the Detroit Golf Club safely. And being that the tour, is mandated that the 2020 Rocket Mortgage Classic go on without players, with only players and caddies and essential staff, we spent a lot of time figuring out how do we host these parties on the property in a very safe manner. And we're treating this as a return to work event, much like many businesses right now are figuring out how do we return to work in a safe manner. It's the same for us. And so we've been working and continue to work closely with the tour, local and state government, Detroit Police Department, health officials, the city of Detroit. Everyone's been great to help develop a real strong health and safety plan that we're really confident and comfortable with, advising everyone that who'll be playing and working at the tournament to follow safer at home practices during this week and when away from Detroit Golf Club. And so we're really confident of what we're on the cusp of doing now. But as we look to 2021, we hope that, obviously the public climate returns to a place where we can bring back all of our fans and partners to the course and take in and enjoy 2021. Our tournament team has exhausted all of our efforts to focus on doing what we have to pulling off this year's event on short notice. But we're really excited about what the future holds and think we'll learn a lot about what happens this year and be able to make next year bigger and better.
Absolutely. Count on us to be involved next year, too. So, Jason, thank you. Best of luck for the tournament coming up in a few days, actually, and look forward to working with you and your colleagues from Tournament, Quicken Loans throughout the year as we break down this great divide in technology in Detroit. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do, Larry.
Yep, thank you. Look forward to our partnership. That was Jason Langwell of the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And coming up next, we're going to hear from Lizabeth Ardisana. She's an entrepreneur and a new foundation trustee, and that's when Caring for Kids continues right here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Foundation.
And today we have Lizabeth Ardisana. Beth, as I call her, is an entrepreneur, having co-founded ASG Renaissance, a technical and communications firm and performance-driven workforce, a scheduling and staffing firm. Beth is an active business and civic leader in the Michigan and Hispanic communities and serves on numerous corporate and educational boards, including, I'm proud to say now, the Children's Foundation. Beth holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of Detroit, a master's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Michigan, and a bachelor's degree in mathematics and computer science from the University of Texas. That's a lot of good education. So, Beth, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and really, truly appreciate your willingness to serve on the Children's Foundation Board, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I thought I'd ask you, as an entrepreneur, to tell our listeners a little bit about your journey and key elements of your success, starting out and then now as you continue to have great success.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. So I would say, I would say that I'm actually an accidental entrepreneur because it really wasn't my intention. I came to Michigan many years ago after I graduated from college, to work for Ford Motor Company. And by the way, that was fabulous, and I still consider Ford like family.
Great.
But I decided, for reasons in hindsight I don't even want to go into because they were probably all wrong, that I needed to go out and start my own business and be an entrepreneur. So I did that, and have learned to love it. I think that the fun part about being an entrepreneur is that, every day you got to think about what you do and think about how your customers react to that and think about how you can make a contribution. Some days that works really well. Some days the environment's not too good and, times are challenging. But, I'd say the key to success, whether that's today or when I started, is that you really literally have to wake up every day and say, what am I doing for my customer today?
Right.
How am I contributing today? And by the way, I think that applies to entrepreneurial adventures as well as the community work we do.
Absolutely.
Every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
What am I doing today?
Yep. And so particularly in these trying times, I would think that it's even more important.
It is. And adapting is really critical. And, we keep talking about new normal. I don't even know what the old normal was anymore. But, how do we change? What do we do? And how do we make that work, for ourselves and for the people around us? So, that's the fun part of being an entrepreneur is you get to not only think about that, but you actually get to implement it every day.
Yeah, and we're talking with Beth Ardisana about her journey as an entrepreneur, and thought I'd now ask Beth about, you are very involved serving on corporate and educational boards, such as Huntington Bank and Next Energy, along with Kettering University, the Michigan Colleges Alliance. And what are your sort of favorite parts of serving on those types of boards? And then I'm going to ask you later about some foundation boards. But these corporate boards, along with these educational boards, what do you really like about that?
There's two things that are my favorite parts of being on those kinds of boards. One is that, you get to look longer term. So you get to look at, what's the future, what's the strategy we should be taking, and you feel like you can influence that. So I enjoy that. I enjoy trying to make sure that we're all going in the right direction, and what does that longer term look? You can sort of lift yourself a little bit above the day-to-day. So that's good. But the very best part about being on boards like those is the people that you get to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you meet people that you might not meet in your everyday life. You get to participate, particularly on educational and environmental issues are really important to me. So, you really get to see who's working on that. And it's inspiring, the people that you meet and the people you get to work with. And in my everyday, more narrow life, in my own business, I might not be able to get that.
Yeah, and so I have to believe, I came from higher ed after, I was there for 26 years, and a lot was going on then, but a lot's going on now, and then I know a lot of change is occurring in the banking business, so these board involvements with what's going on in the world have to really keep you and your colleagues on these boards busy strategizing for the future as it relates to both corporate and educational strategies.
Well, I would say, Larry, in the things that I work on, which is banking and the future of banking and the future of educational institutions, and particularly you can see from a lot of the things I do, I work on private education.
Right.
And the future of that, what's that going to look like? I mean, from long term, what that's going to look like to September, what's that going to look like? It's been both challenging and interesting to try to look to see what that's going to be.
Yeah, they need people like you to advise them. And as I mentioned, I worked at the University of Toledo for a long time, and board members coming from the entrepreneurial world were extremely helpful. So I know that these organizations value your input in these trying times. Now, you're also very involved in foundation boards, including a very, very large one, which is the C.S. Mott Foundation. Another, not so large as Mott, but a very large foundation, the Skillman Foundation, the Council of Michigan Foundations, which serves as sort of a advocate advisor for all of our foundations in the state. And then, as I mentioned, you were kind enough to agree to serve on the Children's Foundation Board. And so how do these foundation boards differ than what we just talked about as it relates to either a corporate board or a educational board?
Similarities and differences. So the similarity is it's even more fascinating people you get to work with, because you're working with people who are committed to the same things you're committed to and come from all walks of life and have all different perspectives. So just listening to what others have to say and looking at the direction that people are envisioning for the future, similar, but a little broader, because if a corporation is looking longer term or an educational institution is looking longer term, that's a few years. Or a foundation really looks even further and tries to make bigger changes. So it's similar but a longer kind of view. And when I look at what the foundations do, and particularly as I look at all of the foundations, the interaction and the coordination between foundations is getting to be greater and greater, because I think, Larry, as we look at all the issues, and this is truly what impressed me about the Children's Foundation is how each issue that we're working on, for example, Stillman is dedicated to children in the city of Detroit with a focus on education. But you can't educate a child if they're not well.
Right.
Okay? So, and if their family's not healthy.
Correct.
So, how we can all work together and what that looks like, I think has been really impressive as I've worked with foundations.
Yeah.
Now, the other difference, though, is that they don't have to raise money. Okay?
Right.
So that's a difference.
Right. Well, universities certainly do.
Right. Right. So it's kind of fun to work in an organization that doesn't have to raise money.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're talking with Beth Ardisana, who is a entrepreneur and serves on many boards that we talked about, and also now on the Children's Foundation board. And so, Beth, you and I met several months ago, and then that was through Doug Farrick, who is our Chief Development Officer, and had some great discussions about what we're trying to do at the Children's Foundation. We're now a community-based foundation for children and families, concentrating more on the social determinants of health. As you mentioned, families need to be well for kids to be well. And so if I could ask you, what interested you about joining our board as we go down this path, which is quite different than being a hospital-based foundation?
Yeah, so my experience with education started my interest in what impacts that. And the one thing I saw, and you mentioned earlier that I'm a trustee of the Mott Foundation in Flint, and the Flint water crisis really demonstrated to me the depth of the connections in what impacts children. So the water related to nutrition, related to education, all of that. When you looked at the total picture of that and the financial stability and health of the family, it just showed me that it's all part of one big picture. And I thought, Larry, you and the Children's Foundation have the most critical element of that you're addressing. So it seems exciting to me to be able to work on the issues that you're working on with the board, which is fantastic. If I go back to working with interesting people comment, nobody more interesting than the board of the Children's Foundation.
Well,
so that was exciting to me.
Yep.
And, just being able to understand what you're doing and use my connections both to Stillman and Mott and other things that I do. How can I help make sure that's a collaborative effort? So that's what excited me about it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we're honored to have you, and we're fortunate that you're willing to do this. And we've already put you to work. Doug Farrick has you working hard. And then I asked you to serve on the Finance Committee. And you said
Another
yes.
thing I'm thrilled to do.
Well, we have a lot going on as it relates to affiliating with other organizations in the community, like Rocket Mortgage Classic, First Tee, Paul W. Smith Charities. And so we need your advice as it relates to all of your experiences. So we're going to keep you busy, Beth.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, yes. Well, thank you. And thanks for being on Caring for Kids. And that's Beth Ardisana, who is our newest trustee at the Children's Foundation. And coming up next, we're going to hear from Dr. Kiran Taylor of the Hope Network when Caring for Kids continues here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR. Presented by the Children's Foundation. Once again, here's Larry Burns.
Moving along in our June Caring for Kids show, and now we have the pleasure of talking to Dr. Kiran Taylor. Dr. Taylor of Grand Rapids is the Chief Medical Officer for Hope Network and a clinical assistant professor in the Michigan State University College of Human Medicine Department of Psychiatry. Dr. Taylor earned her Doctor of Medicine from the University of Michigan Medical School and is a board-certified psychiatrist. Dr. Taylor's clinical and research interests include psych oncology, collaborative care, and suicide prevention, all things that the Children's Foundation is deeply concerned about and trying to help. And most recently, Dr. Taylor has been appointed by Governor Whitmer to serve a 4-year term on the Michigan Suicide Prevention Commission. Dr. Taylor, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Yes, very impressive background and You and I have had an opportunity to meet a couple times, and so look forward to our conversation. So you're relatively new with the Hope Network as the Chief Medical Officer. So tell us about your role with the organization, and then maybe a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted your activities.
Sure. So just for some background, Hope Network is a nonprofit organization founded in 1963 with a mission to help empower people with disabilities or disadvantages to achieve their highest level of independence. And we serve over 20,000 people throughout the state of Michigan annually in over 75 counties and 270 locations.
Wow.
So very, broad reach across the state. And as my role as Chief Medical Officer, I really see it as twofold. One, to help optimize the clinical quality and safety of the care we deliver, and the other, to help innovate clinical care models through research and data, and to help innovate the delivery of these care services, all to promote access, because we know behavioral health access is very challenging throughout.
Absolutely. In all areas of the state.
Right. And COVID-19 has really shifted my focus and the organization's focus towards a new context for safety. COVID-19 is very new, understanding the disease, so how do we keep our patients, consumers, and our employees safe? So a lot of attention focused on screening, sanitization, PPE resources, keeping people, our consumers and patients and our employees safe. So with that attention to safety, the other piece, though, is I believe it's accelerated. COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated our innovation. We've been able to start up telehealth and programs where we hadn't before to promote access because of the restrictions that COVID-19 placed on people's ability to get around and our ability to get to people as well. So in a way, that's been very positive through this pandemic and quite remarkable to watch our teams come together with our patients and consumers to meet everybody's needs.
Yeah, and I think that that's true for a lot of organizations. It is for the Children's Foundation that kind of forced to use technology in some ways that we thought about, but now we're actually doing that will continue, I think, moving forward. So we're talking with Dr. Kiran Taylor from Hope Network, psychiatrist, chief medical officer of the Hope Network. And as a psychiatrist, Dr. Taylor, before and I guess during this COVID-19 crisis, what trends are you seeing in young adults in adolescents as it relates to their mental wellness? And I mentioned in the introduction that mental health is a key focus of the Children's Foundation. And we hope, as you know, we hope to even have more of a presence on an inpatient point of view in the near future. But as a psychiatrist, what are you seeing in young people?
Right. It's a great question, Larry. And really, the data tells us we're seeing increasing rates of depression, anxiety, attention deficit, and hyperactivity disorder, and suicide in our young adults. And that was before COVID. Many of the factors that may be influencing that, social media being a big piece. Many of our young adults communicate through those platforms now. What some may call as, quote, cyberbullying can lead to feelings of isolation, frustration, sort of kids feeling like they're under a microscope of TikTok or whatever way they're communicating, and their opinions, reactions, mistakes. We're all humans. We all make mistakes.
Right.
Seem to be magnified through these social media platforms. So that, again, lens of judgment seems to be magnified. And that can contribute to your feelings of self-confidence, which can impact then your mood. So back to the depression and anxiety, fears of how people are going to view you. And COVID-19 pandemic has, in a way, amplified some of those stressors because none of us, kids included, young adults, couldn't go out and see their friends in the way they usually see them or see them at school on a daily basis. Then reliance on social media increased. So then the potential negatives of that fostering isolation, loneliness, and depression, anxiety is there and is a reality. Also, we're disrupted in our routines, and that's particularly relevant to young adults. Getting up for school every day, having a sense of routine and responsibilities that has been blurred by COVID-19 for understandable reasons.
Right.
So that can impact sleep when you're not in your routine, and we know sleep, for all of us, regardless of age, impacts our mood and how we view the world and our thoughts and our actions. So all of these kind of feed into the potential for individuals who are already vulnerable to feeling down or having lots of worries or even feeling like their life's not worth it and maybe they want to end it. A lot of this disruption can feed into the stress of those emotions. So that's what I'm seeing around, mental health concerns. On the other side, it's opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity for resiliency, right? Yep. Young adults and sort of, the younger we are in a way, the more resilient we have the potential to be more resilient, sort of the opposite of the you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So young adults do have resiliency that maybe older adults may not, and that is an opportunity to develop and strengthen those coping mechanisms and ways to be resilient and to meet these new challenges that the pandemic has brought.
Yeah, in my experience, particularly in higher ed about resilience, particularly in underserved communities where maybe the family structure is not as supportive or strong as it could be or should be, is that it might just require one person in some child's life that takes an interest or serves as a guardian angel or a mentor. And it's one of the things that I learned, particularly, in teaching and at the University of Toledo for many years. And so do you see that as well, as that if one person reaches out to a youngster, it can make a big difference?
Yes, absolutely. Just the feeling that someone's there, you're not entirely alone. It reduces those feelings of isolation and loneliness. Absolutely.
Good. So the Children's Foundation I mentioned is very, we now have over 100 partners, by the way, Hope Network being one of those throughout the state. We just recently made 60 new grants, several of them in Grand Rapids, our first one in Traverse City, another one in Kalamazoo. So we're really on the move statewide. And we are really talking more and more about what I like to call social determinants of health and how they impact a family and how, in this case, they impact a child. And so what are your thoughts about social determinants as it relates to the overall wellness of a child and in particular mental health?
Well, Larry, that's one of the reasons I chose to work at Hope Network, quite frankly, is because Hope Network has service lines not just around mental health care services like addiction, depression, anxiety, but also has resources and developed programs for housing, transportation, and workforce development for adults. And so the opportunity to link the needs of social determinants with access to behavioral health care, to me, is tremendous. And the future of how we can help young adults and anyone of any age, quite frankly. And so to your question, I do believe that looking at the holistic perspective of an individual, and particularly our kids, because, their parents' ability to have a steady income, be able to provide food or a roof over their head is part of their sense of routine and reliability. And so that impacts how they view the world and how they can focus on themselves. The time of being a young adult is to learn more about yourself, generate your self-confidence, and who you want to be in the world, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's hard to do that if you're not sure when you're eating or where you're staying. And, those are circumstances that, are unfortunate. And so how do we help bridge those needs for our kids and their families so that they can have a better quality of life and focus on their health more proactively, whether it's their mental health or even their physical health, right, which leads to then access. So it's kind of like a hierarchy of needs. So if you're not sure where you're staying or where you're eating, then how are you going to maybe be able to reliably make it to your doctor's appointment, right, to see your psychiatrist or your therapist? Or how are you going to be able to refill, decide between money for the electric bill or the medication copays?
Yeah, exactly. And we deal with those issues, as you do, all the time with folks. And so you're relatively new at the Hope Network. We're talking to Dr. Kiran Taylor, who is the medical director at Hope Network. So beyond COVID-19, what are you excited about with Hope Network and your role, particularly as it relates to the future of Hope Network?
Well, Larry, I am really excited about innovation and using data to drive that innovation. Hope Network has, again, a very wide access and breadth across the whole state, and we offer a variety of amazing programs to help improve patients' and consumers' lives. And how do we measure that success? How do we show the quality of the program and monitor the ongoing safety? How do we know what's working and what's not? Where are better solutions? That leads to the innovation. So for me, that's the really exciting piece, is how do we take an organization that has so many resources and services and be able to tell the story through data to continue to grow and sustain.
Great. Wonderful. So appreciate you being on Caring for Kids. Congratulations on your job. And more importantly, I look forward to working with you and your colleagues at Hope Network in the future.
No, thank you, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Yep, our pleasure. That was Dr. Kiran Taylor, who's doing amazing work through the efforts of the Hope Network. And so thank you, Dr. Taylor. Coming up next, I'm going to provide you an update on some foundation news, some activities that we're doing and we're involved in, and it's right here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
A couple things that I wanted to share with you regarding the foundation. Foundation remains committed to the important services that our community partners provide. In March, we launched an emergency relief fund. To date, we have contributed over $300,000 to our partners and created some new partnerships, really trying to help nonprofits throughout the state during this COVID-19 crisis. We're very proud of that, and we're going to continue to do that for the next several months. We've been able to raise additional funds due to the generosity of our trustees and several other donors throughout the nation, actually. Also, our spring grant cycle has come to a close. I'm delighted to announce that the foundation now has over 100 partners statewide, and we have awarded more than $60 million. That's $60 million since 2011. And this recent cycle, nearly 60 grants were approved, and more than 20 of them are new projects, new partners. As I mentioned, we now have over 100. 3 short years ago, we had 4, so we're on the move. Top priority of us is always the safety and health of our donor staff and community, and so I wanted to let people know that we have some events coming up. Derby for Kids. As you know, the Kentucky Derby was originally scheduled for May 2nd. It's been moved to Saturday, September 5th, so we plan on having our event at the fabulous Country Club of Detroit on September 5th, so details will be coming out soon. And then our Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Summit was rescheduled to April 13th of next year. So April 13th, 2021. More details will be coming over the next several months. So we're on the move. We're glad you're listening. And thank you for joining us here on Caring for Kids and for your continued support. Be safe, stay healthy, onward.
Caring for Kids with Larry Burns on WJR has been presented by the Children's Foundation.